All right, welcome Bronco Nation. This is another exciting video during the bye week here that I'm getting to do because, again, Boise State not playing this week, or not played this last weekend. By the time you're watching this, you're probably a couple days away from kickoff. But Boise State didn't play this last weekend, so it gave me a chance to work on some other videos. This is the second video in that kind of connection of videos I got to work on. The first one was a Jackson Boise State trading cards unboxing, so make sure you go watch that video. I'm doing this video with Master Football, where we're going to check in on Boise State, see what their season's looking like up to this point, and what we might predict going forward throughout the rest of the season. Of course, he and I did a preseason predictions video where we did a similar kind of thing. So this is kind of like just checking back on our work. How did we do? And how do we think Boise State's going to do going forward? And then I've got another video that you'll probably have already watched because I think I'm going to put this one out after it, but I'm of course going to preview the Boise State Air Force game. And I'm also going to do just a look at the Mountain West as a whole and what we might expect from them team by team going forward the rest of the year, just like it did in my preseason predictions for the Mountain West. So second video in that very exciting lineup. Let's get right into it. Master Football is back. You want to talk a little bit about yourself, Jake?
Yeah, hi guys. And again, I hope that you guys know me. Okay, we've done a couple of videos here, some collaboration here, but Master Football with Jake Posey. And again, if you ever the problem with Master Football is search algorithm, this and that. My name is Jake Posey. If you look up Jake Posey, you'll see an M. It's got green. It's got orange. That's who I am. Hit subscribe. Okay, I'd really appreciate that. But yeah, I love everything football. Love my Boise State Broncos. As you see, Mr. Bronco Blademeyer there too. So we connected on this. We found each other kind of through social media and the fact that we like to make these videos, and great minds think alike. He actually was in my living room for an interview on my channel recently. A good one to go check out. And you can see the fact that we are, it's actually interesting. Our conversation really lamented the current state. It was right before the game when they played UT Martin. And we knew that there was something was wrong in Denmark. I don't know the exact quote from that play, but something was up, and it seems to have been solved. But we'll kind of touch base on that the more we get on here. But love to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And Jake is also on Twitter, Master Football with Jake Posey, same handle. You can find him on YouTube. So make sure the link will be for both his Twitter and his YouTube will be in the descriptions for this video. All right, so let's get talking. I will admit, kind of right off the bat, before we start talking about this, I'll probably be a little bit off. I made the massive mistake, something I haven't done in 8 years of trying a McDonald's hamburger. Totally messed me up. Don't do it. There's so many better options. I know there's a lot of Idahoans out there who might be upset because their livelihood depends on the cattle ranches and the potato farms, but there's just better options out there. So let's look at the PSA. Anybody's thinking about going to McDonald's? I'm not afraid to say this, behind their back. I say this to their face. Well, I was actually at a conference one time where there was a McDonald's rep there, and I told them straight up, your burgers are terrible. He gave me 2 free coupons to try McDonald's, and I'll tell you what, free McDonald's does not taste any better than paid for McDonald's. So let's get into the meat of the discussion here, as it were. You
tried. Okay.
We're talking about Boise State football, though. So got the season up to this point. Obviously, it started off not the way fans wanted to. Boise State losing in the opener, 17-34 versus Oregon. And it wasn't just a loss. You had your starting quarterback out by the time you were less than halfway through the second quarter. He'd already thrown 2 interceptions, had a forced fumble, and he was gone. Your starting quarterback, your 4-year starter, out of the game. The freshman comes in, Taylor Green takes over, has an okay look there, but Boise State still loses that game. Then they go in and they beat New Mexico and UT Martin, again, a game that I was actually going at Boise for, a chance to travel up to and meet with Jake and do that video, kind of talking a little bit about my Boise State fandom and how it all came to be. And then Boise State played UT Martin. And again, neither of those games, New Mexico or UT Martin, both wins, but neither of them were convincing. Neither of them were dominant. You were playing very obviously. I mean, it's no secret that those are both bottom of the barrel teams. New Mexico lower in the Mountain West, and UT Martin not the top FCS opponent. And Boise State struggles to be dominant against both of those teams. And then you got the UTEP game, and oh boy, the UTEP game. I won't summarize much here other than saying that it was a game where Boise State only totaled 177 yards and had less than 100 yards on offense and passing and rushing. I don't think I've ever seen that from Boise State. It was the worst Boise State FBS appearance, at least since in the 2000s era ever for Boise State offense. And Tim Plow got fired after that game. So Boise State hopes were real low. I mean, you're coming into this. You're at, what is it now, 2-2 at this point. You've lost to UT Martin, lost to UTEP, and your offense coordinator's gone. And then later, just a couple of days later, maybe it was the next day, Hank Bachmeier announced that he's transferring out. So I think probably what's going on was, Dirk Cutter comes in and says, we're going to give Taylor Green a shot. And Hank Bachmeier said, well, I'm gone. And he's gone off to another school. So now Boise State's looking at not having an offensive coordinator from that they started the season with. Dirk Cutter, of course, former Boise State head coach, a lot of experience there, but not the guy who started the season here, not the guy who necessarily is on the same page with all these players. And you've got a freshman quarterback at the helm, and just an offense overall that has not looked good in any sense of the words. And Boise State, and I did a look at that video. I said Boise State might struggle to get to bowl eligibility after this point, right afterwards. Well, that weekend, Boise State did something that I don't think anybody expected. Came out against San Diego State, first half, no points. And Boise State fans went, well, the offense looked a little better, but it's going to be another. You can't expect miracles overnight. Well, you can expect miracles at halftime on the blue, because Boise State came out, scored 35 unanswered points, and put up over 300 rushing yards against San Diego State. I'm going to, when I have a little bit more time, I haven't gone every single game, through the FBS schedules and gone through every single game and seen how if Boise State's ever put up 300 yards rushing. I can't remember. I asked on BJ's show with Spencer Danielson. Neither of them could remember a time specifically where Boise State had rushed for over 300 yards. So I'm not sure they ever have. And then Boise State does it the next day, the next weekend. Boise State plays Fresno State, rivalry, Battle of the Milk Can. They put up another 300 yards. Boise State's coming off 2-0 since the shakeup occurred, with 2 300-yard, back-to-back 300-yard rushing games. And also definitely the first time in school history, even if 300 yards isn't, if I'm wrong there, definitely first time in school history, Boise State has had 2 100-yard rushers in back-to-back games. You had Green and Helani versus San Diego State, and then you had Genty and Helani versus Fresno State. And now Boise State's sitting at 4-2, the only undefeated team in conference in the Mountain West, controls their own destiny, 3-0 against Mountain West teams, and coming off of 2 300-plus yard rushing games. The entire season perspective has changed in just 2 weeks. You go from beginning of the season, hopes, crash, come a bit, crash. And now, Boise State fans, we are sitting at the top of the mountain looking and saying, where are we looking now? Can we get to the top of that Mountain West schedule? Jake, do you have any thoughts on what's happened so far this season before we look at what we might think happens from here?
When I have got a lot of thoughts there, and you painted a really good picture there in terms of the roller coaster of emotions it meant to be a Boise State fan. And I literally have it right here up right now, because there's a couple scenarios here. So Jake Haener for Fresno State rolls his ankle. San Diego State doesn't have nearly the season they're looking for. Air Force loses to Wyoming. The Mountain West, fair to say, September was not nice to the Mountain West. It was ugly all around. There was not a lot of efficiency there. There was not a lot of hope. We were at a very, very realistic chance of looking at a Wyoming versus San Jose State Conference Championship game. That, just saying that out loud, makes you want to throw up. Now, no offense to both those teams, but you're not exactly, the cream of the crop when it comes to the Mountain West. Wyoming was, when they had a guy by the name of Josh Allen, who's tearing up the NFL now. San Jose State won it during the COVID year. Good for them then. But for the most part, we were looking at kind of like I don't want to say nuclear winter, but kind of a lost season for the Mountain West. If Tim Plow had not been fired, and unfortunately, I feel bad for Hank just because he wanted it to work out, but the skill set and the team didn't necessarily mesh well with him. But it's incredible. You take him out, you put in Talon on the field, and you take one guy out of the run game. All of a sudden, Helani looks better. Genty can come off the game. There's a lot of things out. You also shorten the game up because you're running the ball. So the defense looks a little more fresh. There's so many things that just cascade off of that one, the firing and then the transfer and then the substitution. And remember, even then, it's still, like you said, it took 30 minutes of junk football for them to realize, dude, nobody can catch Talon. Why don't we just run him a lot? And then they did. Think about that. Think about this. So in the 3 halves in the last 3 halves, they've scored 35, 20, and 20. So they went from one of the worst offenses we've ever seen in Boise State history to right along where they need to. I mean, I've got Pro Football Focus numbers here up that show that their rushing efficiency has gone through the roof. They have really, really turned it around. In a matter, if you really think about that, it's a matter of 6 quarters. They have gone from, oh my God, we might finish 3rd in the Mountain West Mountain Division to it's our destiny.
Right. Right. And you know what? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about, can Boise State get to the top of the mountain here? Because you're right. Saying Wyoming versus San Jose State in a Mountain West Championship game makes you feel like you've just eaten a McDonald's hamburger. So you definitely don't. You want to push forward with some stars at the top here. Can Boise State push to the top of the mountain here? You've got Green is in at starter. He is 15 of 28 for 213 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But the place where he has made the biggest impact has been on the ground, 19 carries for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing. He is an incredible athlete here for Boise State. And then it's the Helani and Genty show, both of them with 100-yard rushing game, like I said, against Fresno State. And Genty looks like Doug Martin 2.0, I think. I mean, he is just so explosive, and you try to tackle him off the field, and he evades and he runs through tackles. And Helani is great as always. We always know Helani's going to be good. So, and then another surprise here from the wide receivers, Billy Bowens has taken a little bit of a center stage here. He had that great game against San Diego State. Even though the passing game isn't necessarily the biggest focus, you'd think maybe the slot guys would come in and be a little bit of a heavier role. But he caught a touchdown versus Fresno State. So it's really been exciting to see a lot of these new faces, Green, Genty, Bowens, kind of rising to the top here. Let's look at the rest of the games here for Boise State. They're 4-2 with 6 more games to go. Let's look at what we think Boise State might finish the year at. So just to kind of summarize off of what we were predicting coming into this, I thought Boise State would go 10-2 overall, and at this point be 5-1. They are 4-2, so I wasn't quite off on the total number of games they would have lost, but I was definitely off on the games that they were going to lose. I did not see UTEP coming, and I was actually predicting a win against Oregon State. So 5-1 is what I was predicting. They're actually 4-2, 10-2 overall. They still have a chance to maybe make that record. You were predicting a little bit more of a higher hopes here for Boise State. 11-1 overall, 6-0 coming into this, and that first loss both of us had in the preseason, Boise State taking, for you, their first loss, for me, their second loss to Air Force. Now, this is a game Boise State's playing at Air Force. Let's look at these predictions have changed at all. Boise State's playing at Air Force. They had a loss to Utah State and Wyoming. They did win against Colorado, which doesn't look like as good a win as it did at the beginning of the season. But here's the interesting thing, is that because Air Force has lost to Utah State and Wyoming, Boise State doesn't necessarily have to win this game. You came into this year looking and thinking that might be a game Boise State, that's make it or break it. But Boise State 3-0 right now, and they've got, we'll just kind of look at the rest of the schedule real quick. Air Force, Colorado State, BYU, which might be a tough game, but it's not in conference. Nevada, Wyoming, Utah State. Colorado State doesn't look good. Nevada doesn't look good. Wyoming's having a little bit of a better year, but then Utah State. I mean, Boise State could lose to Air Force and still be okay. Do you think that's going to happen? Do you think that they're going to lose this game?
So going off of, well, first of all, my prediction abilities aren't very great. I had the team going 11-1, but we're not going to touch on that again. Okay. We're going to just ignore that. Okay. Throw that away. Because the thing about my 11-1 prediction was it was an 11-1 prediction based on the defense. I believe the defense is as the defense has been sold. We know what to expect. Defense is solid. Defensive backs are really solid. Linebackers are good. Defensive line's good. Defensive line's got a rotation. Really like what they do there. As long as they get off the field. You saw the fact that Oregon State gave a ton of extra possessions. In addition to UTEP would not get off the field because Boise State was always coming off the field. So it was one of those things where as long as if they only have to play defense for 35 minutes a game, they're fine. They go in 40, they go in anywhere harder than that, and it's trouble. But the offense is completely different than what I thought they were going to be. I thought we were going to have this high-flying passing attack. We've got all these senior offensive linemen. We've got some running backs who are solid, who are going to be doing pretty good. I thought it was going to be a pass focus with running back supplementary offense. It's the complete opposite of that, where we are a physical, run down your throat kind of team. And the big thing you said right there, you're talking about how Taylon's stats. I think the big aspect behind Taylon is that his biggest contribution is the same contribution that Vince Young gave to Chris Johnson, CJ2K, when he had the 2,000-yard rushing season, was whenever they would run the veer, somebody always had to stay out of the box to account for the quarterback. And then all that takes is George Helani needs one extra guy out of the box, and boom, 9 yards a carry, 7 yards a carry, absolutely killing it throughout the season. But and again, to go off with my predictions, though, because that was your original question, to go off my predictions, we're looking at a couple of games here. They do actually have one game to give against Utah State. I don't know if I necessarily believe in Wyoming or not as a program going forward. They are 4-3. Colorado State is one of the worst teams in FBS football right now. There's no nice way to say it. It is what it is. They've already beaten New Mexico. Utah State is going to be a contender, but it's going to be a game at home, but at the same time, I don't know what to make of Utah State. At one point, Utah State versus Nevada, Utah State versus Colorado State. At one point, they had their fourth string quarterback in the game. So there's a lot up to, I just don't know what's going on there. So my prediction is that, first of all, it's playing Air Force is just tough. I actually was watching the UNLV game, kind of hoping that UNLV could give them a little bit of a run there, but literally UNLV could not stop the 7-yard fullback dive, and they ran it every single play in a row. It was one of the most boring 70-yard touchdown drives I've ever seen in my entire life. But that's what they do. If you can't stop it, we're coming right at you. That's what they do. Boise State, I will say this, with the fact that they are now a running team, they're able to impose their physicality on the opposing team. That could change some dynamics there because, I do think our defense is better than Air Force's defense. I do like Air Force's defensive backs. They're actually pretty solid back there. But I'm going to, again, I 11-1, man. I think that, a 6-0 end is not so much because I think Boise State is that good. I actually do like a lot of things that they do. They play a good complementary football with their running game and with their defense. But if you look at the back half, man, BYU's a little bit down. BYU's defense cannot stop anybody. Their offensive line is very, very good. Colorado State is one of the worst teams in the FBS. It's just, no ifs, ands, or buts. I'm not trying to be mean. It is what it is. Utah State has no idea what's going on at quarterback. Wyoming's already lost 3 games. And Air Force is, like you said, that Colorado win is looking a lot less spectacular because they might be the second worst team in FBS football right now. So I think that 6-0 is not unrealistic. And actually, realistically, the worst part that's going to annoy you and me so much is this plays into most Boise State seasons where September, it kind of takes them a while to get through some things. And then they get into Mountain West mountain play and it really softens up.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You saying 11-1. I mean, that doesn't make you a bad prediction analyst because that's what everybody was saying. I mean, a lot of people were out there. I mean, some people were out there saying, that it's going to be 7-5 again or whatever. But when all the former players that came on my channel, they all were saying 12-0, 11-1. Almost every single one of them thought that was going to be, 11-1 or 12-0 Boise State. And you talk about Boise State's offense not being what you expected to. We were all fooled. I mean, so I actually, when I did the passing game preview with Ryan Dinwiddie and he came on my channel, I was actually ready to say, and I have it written down here, I was actually ready to say that Boise State would focus more on an up-tempo RPO style attack where Hank's legs would be tried to use in the run game, or the quarterback's legs would try to use in the run game, and they would push the backs as the focus and use them a little bit more in the passing game. I was actually ready to say that. And then before I made my predictions, I let Ryan Dinwiddie go first. And he said that when he was in Boise for the spring game, he had a conversation with Tim Plow. He'd spent time on the field. He talked about Tim Plow. And Tim Plow had told him that this was going to be a pass-heavy focused offense, which is completely the opposite of what Andy Oblos wanted, the completely opposite of what we ended up seeing. But he told him that this was going to be pass-heavy focused attack. And I went, wow, like I was actually rewriting my predictions as he was talking. I was like, well, I can't then come on here and say, well, just out of my analytical mind, I think this is going to happen because he's talked to Tim Plow. Tim Plow has told him this is going to be a pass-heavy attack. So I lined it out and I didn't say it. I should have said that. I should have just said, well, he's saying that, but we might see something else because that's what we've seen Tim Plow try to run with Boise State because that's Andy Oblos one. It was a run-heavy attack. Didn't work out with Tim Plow. And I honestly think that's why he didn't end up working out is because he wasn't allowed to run the pass-heavy attack that he wanted to run. But regardless of the decision why it didn't work out, he's gone. Dirk Cutter comes in. He has all of the experience. He has all the knowledge. He actually knows how to call a running game. Tim Plow had no idea how to call running plays. He actually knows how to call a running game. He knows how to use his playmakers to work off of each other. And Boise State has exploded in the run game with that run-heavy focus. And it is a very different team. Now, you talk about 6-0 here. You talk about 6-0 through the final stretch, an Air Force team that's 4-2, Colorado State team that's 1-5, a BYU team that's 4-3, a Nevada team that's 2-5, a Wyoming team that's 4-3, and a Utah State that's 3-4. Nothing there pops off the board and says this is you can't go 6-0 against this team. However, what I want to think about here is that Boise State, back-to-back 300-yard rushing games. They have looked very, very good on offense, especially after the second half of the San Diego State game. They decided to focus on what they were good at, and they have done well. However, you're also looking at two teams that are having very off years, kind of like you said at the beginning. I mean, Jake Haener, Fresno State doesn't have an offense because Jake Haener's out. He was their entire offense. So they're now on to their backup quarterback, and they might even be under their third string after his performance last week. So, I mean, they did beat San Jose State. So who knows? Anyhow, they don't have an offense right now. So they don't have an offense. San Diego State is just not working out with Burmeister. They've looked terrible. Something actually you mentioned when we were talking, when we had one of our preview videos, you talked that it might not actually work out quite as well, and he hasn't worked out quite as well. So San Diego State and Fresno State don't have offenses. Boise State is going to come up against some teams here, specifically Air Force and BYU, that do have offenses. I mean, BYU is 4-3, but their losses are to Oregon, Notre Dame, and Arkansas. And Notre Dame and Arkansas aren't necessarily the top teams they were at the beginning of the year, but they're still good teams.
They're still talented, yeah.
And they did beat Baylor. Now they have struggled against some Mountain West teams. Utah State was only a 26 or 38 win, but that's got some rivalry elements in there. They only beat Wyoming by 14 points. But you look at these two teams, Boise State's going to play against teams that are better coached than Fresno State and San Diego State. They have better offenses. And I like the defenses of Fresno State and San Diego State, but again, I think Air Force and BYU might have better defenses. At least BYU quality of players definitely does. It's not necessarily the best team. And Air Force, they're just always a solid defense across the board. So Boise State here is 2-0, and and it's definitely because of, it's not just because they're playing soft teams. I mean, San Diego State and Fresno State could have still been losses in the old style. We saw Boise State struggle to Mexico and UT Martin, who are worse than both of these teams. And then, of course, lost to UTEP, who's definitely worse than San Diego State and Fresno State. And Boise State has turned a corner. But is that corner enough of a turn? Is it enough to come in and beat these teams? I'm looking at Boise State here finishing off. You're going to go play. You got to play at Air Force. Boise State is now focused on a run game. So if Air Force gets up by a couple of possessions, they don't have the offense to score quickly, give the ball back to Air Force, to let them run out, 6 minutes of clock, get the ball back, and then score again. Boise State is now matching Air Force with a run. And if they can go toe-to-toe the whole game, passing the rock and win by a possession, that's fine. But if they let Air Force get up, even by a touchdown and a field goal, you're looking at a game that's almost out of reach there, especially if that happens in the third quarter. Because unless you find a way to maybe work in the passing game, and they've been talking about bringing in and seeing some of the backup passing game here with Vidlak. They've been talking about maybe finding a role for him, and maybe that's a way. Maybe he's your passing quarterback package that you can bring in. He can show you something and allow you to come back. But if you're running the offense Boise State's been running, the run-heavy attack, you get down by a couple possessions, it's going to be hard to get back into that game. So I do see Boise State losing the game to Air Force because it's Air Force, because it's going to be hard to stop on defense, because you got to go up and play at Air Force, because it just seems to take Boise State coaches a couple of years to figure out how to beat this team. And I think the offensive style doesn't mesh well with them. I do see them losing to BYU in a very, very close one. I think Boise State could win that. It's at home for Boise State. Magical things are happening on the blue. Andy Avalos is a great coach, and he did a great job of beating them last year when BYU was, I think, better than the team that they are right now. And Boise State right now is offensively, I think, better than that team was. So Boise State could beat BYU. I just think that when you see this offense play against a team that's actually good, that is an offense that can go out and score, and you don't see Boise State's been playing teams that don't have offenses, so the defense is on the field the entire time for the opposing team. And when you're playing a run-heavy attack, you get worn down. If you have time to rest, you don't get worn down quite as quickly. And Boise State maybe doesn't have the great second halves they've been having so far the last couple of games. So I do think Boise State drops 2 games to Air Force and BYU here. But I think that Colorado State, obviously Mike Norvell, he's a great coach, but he's doing, they lost to Sacramento State, and it hasn't been a good year for them. I think we can beat Colorado State. Nevada looks terrible. We should beat them. Wyoming's always a toss-up, but I think that we can match up well against Wyoming. I think that Utah State is, it's the second year in a row that the Mountain West champion has just fallen apart for some reason. And so that last year looked a little bit like a fluke. Boise State should be able to beat them. So Boise State, in your mind, coming in here, you think 11-1. I think Boise State coming in at the end of the year here 8-4, still a positive, I think, based on how they started. Based on how they started and based on what happened after UTEP, the fact that they can even finish at this point 8-4, even in my mind, is a positive for them. But you think 11-1. What do you think Boise State can do with that 11-1 position?
Well, just to make sure, 11-1 was the preseason. I think that a 10-2 is very realistic here.
So yeah, 10.
Just making sure. Just so people don't check out in the comments. Hey man, they already lost 2 games. No, so the one thing, and I remember you and I had talked about this. The one thing I was worried about was the logistical challenges of September. The very, very first month of the season was going to be crazy. 3 away games, travel all over the place, short weeks here and there. And the fact that it actually, I don't necessarily think it cost us the game at UTEP on a Friday night, but I do think the fact that it didn't make any easier, that it was 1,500 miles away, short week, this and that. And then you couple that with the fact that you got an offensive coordinator who thinks that you're a pass heavy team. There's so many things that could go wrong there. The exact opposite I will say about the last 6 games of the season. Air Force after a bye, BYU at home. The road games are Nevada and Wyoming. Nevada might be the 3rd worst team in FBS football. Like I said, the Mountain West is very down this year. And Utah State at home, everything there really, really lines up. The first part of the season was a little messy. Not only were we in a situation where we were coming back 2-2, and then we had to play, San Diego State and then Fresno State, 2 of our rivals back to back. They seem to have turned that ship around. Now it looks like they've got a little bit of help here. Like I'm telling you, the big one is the 1 week before the Air Force game. I guarantee you they've been going over every single wing tee, flex bone formation they can. There's 10 million of them, but at the same time, they've done all that stuff. BYU at home is a big one. Colorado State at home is going to be just a fun game just to go to, just for the sake of, the score. But really look at it there. There's no like back-to-back tough games. There's no, really, really tough road trips that you have to make that you don't have an extra week of preparation for. I really like the logistics of the second half of the season versus the first half of the season, which was travel here, there, short week, bam, boom, fire offensive coordinator, this, that. So now that we've seemed to have found our identity with these last 6 games, I think that they're going to be what they usually are, and they're really going to turn it around. I do think if I had to bet between at Air Force or home against BYU, I would probably say at Air Force would still be tougher elevation. Like you said, if I'm telling you the kryptonite to this Boise State team is 3rd and 7 or longer. That is, we are not designed for that. That's not what we're designed for. So if we get into a lot of those situations, it's going to be bad. Talon is still a work in progress as a passer. He's got plenty strong of an arm, but still needs to work on passing when the defense knows they're going to pass. He's great. I mean, 2nd and 5, 1st and 10, he's great. You get to a point to where he has to drop back, stay in the pocket, make a play, not as efficient in that instance. So if I had to bet, the conservative side of me would say 5-1, but I think honestly, it really lines up well for a 6-0 finish.
Well, I think my issue here is that, I believe in miracles. I went to Liberty. I believe in miracles, but you've got a team here that was just the worst Boise State offense I've ever seen. And now 2 games back-to-back against San Diego State and Fresno State, it has definitely improved miraculously and turned a corner. But I still don't think that they have been fully tested against teams that are actually going to be able to go out there and top-tier defenses. I mean, neither San Diego State or Fresno State would you be what you would call top-tier, even though they're good. And there's no offense with either of those teams. So for me, if Boise State goes out and they beat Air Force, I'll say this: if Boise State beats Air Force this weekend, and you're right, coming off the bye week, I said on Twitter, if there was ever a week for a bye week, it's this one. Thank God we got a bye week. So if Boise State beats Air Force, comes off the bye week, and even if they beat them by just possession, but if they go out and they beat Air Force, Boise State could go undefeated. I absolutely believe that. I think Boise State can beat BYU. I'm just saying, right? But this might change. I'm going to do in 2 weeks here. I'm going to do a preview for the Boise State BYU game, and I might be saying win at that point. So that could change. But I think that Boise State can beat BYU. I just think BYU is better than their record. I think Jalen Hall is a good quarterback for them, and I just think that they're going to be better than what they've shown so far. Air Force for me, though, is that proving point. That is the spot. If Boise State beats Air Force, I think that they can win the rest of these games here. So, I'm not saying 10-2, 9-3 is off the board. I think 10-2 or 9-3 at least is definitely winnable here. Even if Boise State loses to Air Force, I mean, they still get to 9-3. But if Boise State's sitting in, let's look a little bit here ahead, kind of a little bit more to the postseason, that Mountain West Championship, kind of looking at that. If Boise State's sitting at 8-4, between 8-4 and 10-2, somewhere in that range, what do you think the ceiling is here? Because if for both of us, based on what we're predicting, Boise State would go to a Mountain West Championship game right now. They control their own destiny. They have to lose 2 Mountain West games and have the Air Force and have Air Force not lose any more Mountain West games. So there are, and maybe I think Wyoming might be in that mix too. So they'd have to lose 2 Mountain West games and have Air Force and Wyoming go undefeated the rest of the way out here in order for Boise State not to make it to a Mountain West Championship game. So there is which I cannot believe I'm saying, but there is a very, very good chance that Boise State finds their way into the Mountain West Championship game. And based on who they would play, if Haener comes back, I mean, they could play Fresno State if Haener recovers. Like if Haener gets back in, I think Fresno State can go undefeated. Or it's looking like San Jose State or UNLV, which is just nuts, like you were saying. I mean, the fact that San Jose State was in there a couple of years ago. The fact that UNLV is in this discussion, what the heck is going on in Vegas? I mean, this is the worst team, the perennial worst team ever in the Mountain West, and they're off to 4-2. Now they've lost 2 in a row and given up 40 points in both those games. So normalcy is coming across the board. But I can't stand UNLV because of the whole conference realignment discussion, and I don't think they deserve to be in it. So I want them to just lose every game. But if they don't, if they continue to show this surprise, Boise State is looking at probably playing San Jose State, UNLV, or Fresno State in the Mountain West championship game. What do you think about what Boise State might do in that game between those 3 teams, or if you think another team's going to maybe make it in their way? And what do you think the postseason bowl game might look for Boise State at this point?
So if you look at who they play, I do think that whoever wins the Mountain West Mountain Division, I think is going to host, just because I think that I don't see. Well, first of all, Boise State's off to a 3-0 start. They're the only team that's 3-0 in the conference. Nevada's 0-3. New Mexico's 0-3. What else do I got here? UNLV's 2-2. San Jose State's 2-1. San Diego State's 1-1. Fresno State and Hawaii are both. Hawaii is 1-1. So they're in the running for the Mountain West championship game, technically. So there's the Mountain West Division is historically bad right now. The Mountain West Mountain Division, because Utah State has really not looked like what you thought they can be. I do think this next week, this Boise State Air Force game, if Boise State wins, I mean, it's a foregone conclusion. The Mountain West championship game is going to be in Boise, Idaho. However, if they lose, then it enters some more interesting situations. All of a sudden, that game at Wyoming gets a lot more interesting. All of a sudden, that game at the end of the season, Utah State at home gets a little bit more interesting. So because Utah State has a win against Utah Air Force, and they would, if they win at Boise State, they would have a win against Boise State too. That'd be 2 top contenders there. So I do think that the Mountain West Mountain Division, more than likely, if I was a betting man, I would bet on they were going to host the game. If Boise State, like I said, if they beat Air Force, it's over. If they win the Mountain West, because personally, like you said, San Jose State, UNLV's got a nice running back. San Diego State's one of the worst offenses we've ever seen, not named Boise State before Tim Plow got fired. Fresno State, if Jake Haener gets back, is the dark horse. That absolutely is the dark horse, because you're right. If they were able to stay on the field a little bit longer in that game against Boise State on the blue, that game would have had a much different feel for it. You just felt like you'd never really were worried about Fresno State's offense moving the ball down the field. But Jake Haener on the field, that things change. And again, he's going to probably be recovered by then, or at least more recovered by then. But hypothetically speaking, and here's where it gets crazy. So hypothetically speaking, let's just say Boise State wins to the point of they win the Mountain West. They win the Mountain West championship game as well. They would go to the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl, the Mountain West 1 versus the Pac-12 5. Do you know who is currently the Pac-12 5 right now? It is Oregon State.
Is it Washington? It's not Washington. It's Washington State.
It is Oregon State, my friend. They just won, so we would have a rematch in LA against Oregon State. And I'm asking you as a Boise State fan. I'm thinking there because you look around who's going to be there. It could potentially. It looks like USC, UCLA are at the top. Oregon and Utah, kind of that those 4 have kind of separated themselves from the group below. And then they have kind of a group that includes Oregon State, Washington State, Colorado just beat Cal, but nobody's fooling themselves with Colorado. What do we got here? We have Cal Bears, maybe, but you kind of see the fact that there's the top 4. There's that second tier, which is that Oregon-Washington State game, or Oregon State versus Washington game. So whoever wins that game, more than likely is going to take that 5 seed. But me personally, because of just you feel like this team, this senior laden team, you could tell how talented they are. All it takes was just Dirk Cutter, man, with one last ride, one last season, just come in and just tweak things a little bit, put your guys in the best position to make plays. And we're a completely different offense. Like I said, it's only been 6 quarters that we've really seen that explosive offense. But man, I mean, I personally would love a rematch at Oregon State now, just because that first game of the season, you really felt like they didn't get a really good taste. They were our first exposure to how fast Taylon Green was. You remember that big long touchdown run he had against them, the fact that all those DBs were taking angles and he just blew by them. So I really think that, the cool thing about this situation is both of our scenarios, if they go, let's just say they go 4-2, like you said, but the 2 that you have are Air Force and BYU, they would still go 7-1 in conference. They would more than likely host the Mountain West championship game. It would probably be against San Jose State, maybe UNLV, maybe Fresno State. The Fresno State would be the one I'm most worried about. because, like you said, that the Hainer factor and this and that. So that's the one I'd be most worried about. But it would be potentially, we're looking at it, if they were to win the Mountain West, they would potentially play Oregon State in LA in a rematch of the week 1 complete drubbing that Boise State really, really wants back. I think Boise State fans would love an opportunity to play Oregon State again.
I would love, because I think we are obviously a completely different team than we started the year. And if we started, even though we haven't, like I said, been really tested, we are definitely better as an offense. And we would be competitive in that game for sure. But it would also be equally embarrassing to lose twice to Oregon State in the same year at the beginning and the end. I mean, when you talk about long off seasons, and that is the sour taste in your mouth from like, okay, we lost in the beginning and there were reasons and those reasons are gone. And then we lose at the end and maybe we're more competitive, we still lost. I mean, like, oh my, and then we're so close to Oregon too. Like I wouldn't be able to look at Oregon. I would have to, if I saw an Oregon State fan walking down the street, I'd have to hide in like a dumpster until they walk by, I mean, but if we win, then it's like, hey, that loss doesn't count. We're a different team. That loss doesn't count. We're better than you. We're a completely different team. Maybe we should be ranked in the preseason. Next year looks great. So you build for the next season. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to leave that one up to the football gods because I don't know if I know that the committee tries not to match teams up as much as they can if they've already played before. But sometimes you get into these contractual spots. Now, it is a place where the teams, they don't have to go there. Oregon State could say, and Boise State could also say, we don't want to play. Technically, Boise State could say they don't want to play in the Las Vegas Bowl. They wouldn't. I'm sorry, not the Las Vegas, LA Bowl. They wouldn't. But Oregon State could potentially say, no, we've already beat them. We'll play some other smaller team. We don't care. I don't know, man. I mean, obviously, you still got the rest of the season to shake out. When I was looking at this, I actually got mistaken in my mind. I thought it was the 6th place team that the Mountain West played. So I was looking at Washington or Washington State because they're right there at that 6 and 7 spot right there. Personally, I mean, I know the thrill of like going in and proving it against a team you lost before. And Boise State's done that before with Fresno State in the past. We get to play in the Mountain West Championship game and it feels good. But I don't know. I think Oregon State was part of our this season's history that is gone that we don't need to think about anymore. Personally, I would rather see Washington or Washington State. Obviously, there's a little bit of a rivalry nature there with Washington, and they're both these teams I believe are on our future schedules. I'd have to look at that again, but yeah. I think I'd rather kind of move forward. But hey, I would not complain if we ended up against Oregon State. That would be especially you're looking at a Boise State team. Let's remember, guys, that this is a Boise State team that hasn't been to a bowl game in 2 years and lost in their last bowl game against Washington in a situation that was almost like we weren't playing a bowl game at all because you had Jalen Henderson had won the Boise State and gotten them to the bowl game. And then even though he had been great, Hank Bachmeier just coming off an injury, got the start instead. And then it was a completely different team. So Boise State has had 4 rough years of bowl season where you had a game canceled due to weather, a bowl game that shouldn't have gone the way that it did, 2 years of no bowl games, one that the team just decided not to go to bowl season, and one where the team withdrew at the last minute because of COVID reasons. And then this year, so you've got 4 years basically where it's just been a very disappointing record. Just the fact that Boise State is going to probably go to a bowl game this season is exciting for me. You talk about Mountain West Championship game. If we play Fresno State, I'll be honest with you, if Hainer is at the starting for Fresno State, the Jeff Tedford Hainer factor, where they've been in this situation before, where Boise State has played in the regular season and then Mountain West, and we've always traded off. I think that could happen again because Fresno State's going to want some revenge. They're going to be coming back. They're going to know what we played them with. You've had that trade-off factor. It's just historical. I think that if we play Fresno State, I'm really rooting that Hainer's recovery is a little bit more delayed so that we do end up playing San Jose State or UNLV because I think we will win those games. If we win against San Jose State or UNLV, we will go to the LA Bowl. And yeah, man, Oregon State would be amazing. But I think personally, I'd be rooting a little bit for Washington. I think that I want to get a win against Washington in a way that we deserve to versus the last way that it ended, a little bit more regional matchup there. And we don't have to play a team we started at the beginning of the year at. If we lose the Mountain West Championship game, now we're looking at still going to an at-large bid, which I know used to make Boise State fans feel, terrible and like, oh, this season doesn't even matter. But now we're kind of at a point where I think the expectations are lowered a little bit to where we would still be excited for that. And honestly, Boise State finishing the year there 8-4 or 10-2, somewhere in that range, I think we'd get a decent team. I think that there's a chance. I know that the Mountain West matchups put them into these games against the MAC and the Sun Belt. I think that ESPN would probably look at Boise State and say that's a team that we can bring in and get some money off of, and pairs up against a nice East Coast G5 school. So I'm excited either way for postseason. Like you said, Mountain West Championship is definitely, I think, something that Boise State fans have a good chance of looking forward to this year. A win in that is definitely on the line. And in the bowl game situation, either way, I think is going to be great for Boise State. Because either way, you're either going to play a team you already beat or already lost to, which you can get revenge, a team that's regional to you that you have some history with, or you're going to get a chance to play in a bowl game at all. And that's just great as a Boise State fan right now.
So very interesting. You had said that, again, like you said, you were talking about the team that you already played early this season or a team that's regional to you. This is even crazier. Guess who game number 1 is next year in Seattle for the Boise State Broncos? It is Boise State at UW game 1 next season. So do you want to play that team or do you want to play Oregon State? And again, like you said, we're going back and forth. You're kind of leaning more towards Washington. I'm leaning more towards Oregon State. But either way, if we take care of business, that's what we're kind of in line for. So same team, same season twice, or the end of the season and the beginning of the season, same team. It's kind of a cool little narrative there.
Well, Boise State's already done this, right? So was it 2015? Am I thinking that right? That we went and we played Washington in the bowl game. Which year was it? It was 2000. I think it was 2000. It was North quarterback. So it was 2012. So it was 2012. We played Washington in the bowl game and we beat them in the Mako Bowl, and it was really close. We won on a field goal. I think Dan Goodell was kicking, but I might be wrong there. Anyhow, we beat them on a field goal, and then we played them the next year and got destroyed. I think I have that right in my head about how that worked. I apologize. I'm usually much better on this, the kind of the Boise State trivia there as far as when they played. But Boise State has been in this situation before where they played them a bowl game and then they played them the next year. Boise State has done that before with Washington. I'll tell you what, man, honestly, for me, I like playing them in a bowl game because if you lose in the bowl game, you can say, well, it's bowl season, and we're going to have a whole offseason to work on it, and we can come back and beat you to start the next year. So you got a little bit of a chance for redemption, and you've already seen them a little bit before, so you kind of get to prepare. If you beat them in bowl season, well, then you can come into the whole offseason momentum saying, we've already beat this team, we can do it again. We're going to be a little bit of a different team, so will they, but we're riding into it with momentum, and you kind of get like a preview of next year, and it just fuels this momentum for the season. It just feels like you're playing, like you're off on a completely new sheet. So I think I would still preferably play a team you're going to start the season with than play a team you started the year with, at least from my mindset.
Sure.
But either way, we're looking at a Boise State prediction list here that is different than how we started the season predicting, for sure. Certainly different than how we predicted them coming into this year, but is also completely different than if we'd done this video 2 weeks ago after the UTEP loss. So, like I said, it's been a roller coaster of, start off with high expectations, and you came down, and then you crashed, and then we came back up. And by you, I mean one, not you, Master Football, but for a Boise State fan, you came up and then we crashed, and then we are coming back up. Hopefully, there's no more down dips here. Even a lost Air Force, I wouldn't consider a down dip. Even a lost BYU, I wouldn't consider a down dip. I think Boise State has got some great upward heights here to end the year with some excitement. To end this video real quick, let's talk about some statistics that we might see out of Boise State, what Boise State would expect, and then we'll end the video here. But this has been a great discussion, I think, just kind of, again, catching up on the predictions that we had at the beginning of the year. So first off the bat here, quarterback. I was predicting, if you go back and you watch my video with Ryan Dinwiddie, I was predicting that Hank Bachmeier would throw for over 3,500 yards. That is probably the worst prediction I have ever made in the history of college, history of my channel.
You didn't say which school he was going to do it for. You didn't say which school he was going to do it for. So he might go to an air raid team in Conference USA. You don't know. So I'm just saying.
And close the season with back-to-back, 700-yard passing games. He might do it. But I was completely off on that, and I'll admit my mistakes up from this channel, and that was one of them. Do you think that Taylor Green will break 1,500 yards passing this year? He's at 330 yards passing this year. The run game has been the emphasis. They tried to use his arm a little bit more last week, so he had over 100 yards passing versus week before when I think he had under 50 yards passing. Do you think he will break 1,500 yards of passing this year?
So that means 1,200 yards. It's 200 yards a game the rest of the season. I'll say this. If he breaks 1,500 yards, I'll say it's through the regular season, bowl game and conference championship aside, through the regular season. If he breaks 1,500 yards passing, we're 4-2. And I'm just betting because we're down and we're losing, we need to throw. I actually think that I don't think he will. I'm not saying that, not to be to say I automatically think they're going to go 6-0, but I do think that they're going to be very competitive in a lot of those games. And I do think that they match it pretty well with, like I said, the second half of the season matches it pretty well with what you want. But I do not think he's going to break 1,500 yards because I think this team plays defense well enough to where I don't think they're going to allow them. I don't want to say they're going to allow themselves to get down 21-0 or 28-7 or something like that. But I don't think that they play the game that way to where they don't play an up and down game. They play a slow. Avalos is like, we're running the ball. Dirk Cutter's like, I'll run the ball. And the defense is like, we love when you run the ball. So everybody loves that. I don't think they're going to be in a situation where we're going to be 57, 58 shootouts or something like that, because that implies you're going to have the ability to throw the ball downfield. 1,500 yards passing, I would bet the under through the regular season. Bowl game, conference championship aside, but regular season, I would guess no.
I'm on the same page. I'm on the same page with that. Well, let's talk about the running game. Do you think that Helani will break 1,200 yards rushing this year? He's at 544. He hasn't broken 1,000 yards rushing since his freshman year in 2019. Do you think that he can break 1,200? Because he's definitely on pace to get to 1,000. I predicted at the beginning of the year he would break 1,200. Do you think he will get there?
So 1,200 is he's got to have 650 through 6 games. So that's 100 and some change, something like that. And you got to remember that's Colorado State, Nevada, and BYU's defense. Like their run defense has been suspect. Now, granted, suspect against Notre Dame and Arkansas and
Right.
Oregon, who are really, really good. But if you look at the rest of that too, I mean, Wyoming's not exactly known for their smash mouth defense. Neither is Utah State. So he's got a lot of really, really favorable matchups. The hardest one is probably going to be at Air Force. Like we said, he does have his friend Ashton Genty there. So if I had to bet whether or not he gets 100 and some change 6 games in a row, I would say yes. I would bet the over on that. I would go as far as to say not only are we going to have a 1,200 yard rusher, we're going to have 2 800 plus yard rushers as well. You boy, and I think you were trying to allude to that too there. So I'll hand it off to you.
Well, that's perfect. Because my next question, I was going to agree with you on 1,200 plus, and I was going to ask, Genty here, he's sitting at 310 yards rushing. He just had his first 100-yard rushing game. He seems to be building into the offense now versus kind of being more of a change of pace. He's definitely part of that offensive plan. It's not just Helani. They have a plan for both of them. They want to use them heavily. He's at 310 yards rushing now. Could we have 2 backs over 1,000? I know you just said 800 plus, but do you think Genty can get him? He's sitting at 390, so he'd have some work to do here coming in the rest of the season. But do you think he could get to that 1,000?
So 390 to get to 1,000, 610 in 6 games. So that's a tougher sell. I would say end of the season, you put 2 more games in there, and all of a sudden now it gets a little bit different. You start to you got into a conference championship, you get a bowl game. That's a little bit more realistic. But I know for sure he's going to get 800. And not because I think Boise State's offense is incredible. It's because it is the offense. Like this is what we do. Like we are not a team that drops back 50 times in a row. That's not what we do. Genty's going to have tons of touches. Helani's going to have tons of touches. So yes, I do think 800 is realistic. I think 1,000, man, on the year maybe, but I would say probably not. But I know for sure 800.
I think when you start counting in Mountain West Championship game that they're probably going to be able to, or they have a good chance of getting to, and then bowl game, then I think that yes, 1,000 is possible. Right now, I mean, hey, if we keep churning out 300-yard rushing games, he's going to get it for sure. I think if we keep having back-to-back 300-yard rushing games the rest of the season, then I think he will. I think there's going to come a time though where that is not going to be quite as effective. He'll have some, he will personally have some like 60, 70-yard rushing performances that might keep him just below. But yeah, I think that either way, the running game is definitely going to reach higher heights here than the passing game. I mean, that's kind of a given already. But it's exciting to see Boise State with this. We knew we had great running backs. The offensive line was the issue. It's been the issue for 4 years now for Boise State. But somehow the fact, I guess it makes sense when you have 3 running backs, because Taylor Green is basically another running back here. When you got 3 running backs, you have to cover and you have the ability to pass. it doesn't matter how bad your offensive line is. That defense is going to be confused, and they're going to be put on a back foot there. And even a bad offensive line is going to look better and better throughout the season, and maybe reach a point where they become a good offensive line just because of the confidence that they build and the mesh that comes together as a unit. So 1,200 yards rushing for Holani, I think that's doable. 1,000 yards right now, I did say 310. I think it is 390. I couldn't read my own handwriting there. Kind of scribbled between the 9 and the 10 there. I believe Genji does have 390. So I can get close to that 1,000, but maybe not this year. Next year, though, I think he could be definitely a 1,000-yard back for Boise State, regardless of whether Holani's still here or not. I think that they both could definitely get there. All right, real quick here. We got 4 more to go through. We'll do this real quick. 1, wide receiver. I thought at the beginning of the year that no wide receiver would break 1,000 yards, and I'm really pretty close on that. I thought no wide receiver would break 1,000 yards, but I thought that we would have 3 wide receivers who would break 300. Because I thought the ball would be spread out a little bit more. You don't have Khalil Shakir, so Boise State's going to have to spread out their offense. Do you think that Boise State is going to have a wide receiver break 1,000 yards? Which side do you lean on that? And do you think my prediction on 3 wide receivers breaking 300 is definitely something that's going to happen? Boise State right now has 3 top wide receivers: Caples 171, Bowens 156, and Cobbs 144 yards. Going through the rest of the regular season, do you see those 3 players each getting to 300? Do you see any of them getting close to 1,000?
I do see that all 3 of them getting 300 yards. Like I said, I don't think that Talon has a favorite option, and I don't think that Dirk Cutter is designing the offense for a number 1 high volume target, a la Diggs with Buffalo or things like that. I will bet all of the money in the universe that we do not have a 1,000-yard receiver by the end of the season. I love our team. I love what we do. I love Talon. I love everything's going on. We will not have a 1,000-yard receiving receiver at the end of the year. But again, your prediction there, 3 over 300, that's not bad. And you know what? That really points to the fact that the passing game, you really can't key in on anybody. You got to key in on the running game, and that means one-on-one matchups for the guys on the outside. It really helps out, the dynamic between the teams. So no on the 1,000 yards, and I actually would strongly, agree with the 3 for 300.
Okay, 3 more here real quick. Defense, talking about a little bit on defensive focus. I said that Boise State would have more sacks and have an improvement in sacks than they did last year. Boise State has done an okay job overall of getting pressure, but they haven't been able to necessarily get those sack numbers up. Now, last couple of games, they've done a little bit of a better job at it, but overall, George Thomas has been a great addition there to the defensive line, but he hasn't been able to get to the quarterback like a lot of people thought he would. Boise State, 29 sacks last year, only 14 so far this year, but they still have another half of the season to go. Will Boise State break 29 sacks as a team? Will they have one player with more than 7 sacks? Last year, Matlock, 7 sacks was leader. This year, Noah with 3.5 sacks is leader. Can they get over 29? Can one player get over 7?
So to go off of that, I do think we're going to get to that 29 mark. I do think we're going to go over that. I also think that if you look at the second half of the season, other than, and again, like the games that we mentioned, the Air Force game, because there's just going to be not very many opportunities to get sacks, and then the BYU game because they got some NFL dudes on that offensive line. Those are going to be, suspect. But I'm telling you, the defensive line is going to tee off on Colorado State. The defensive line is going to tee off on Nevada. It's going to be an absolute feast in those games. I think Tarles has a really, really good shot of breaking. And Ezekiel Noah, he's a pretty good blitzer too. But again, I like, the George Tarles for sure is a very, very good dominant edge rusher out there. I do think he's going to go over 7. And I do think the fact that even with those 2 games that are where sacks are going to be hard to come by, one because of scheme, the other because of players, I think that, there's so many opportunities where they're going to be, if they're able to hold the ball and run the ball and create leads, I think that there's just going to, just organically get a lot of sacks in the game against Colorado State, in the game against Nevada. I think it's going to happen. I mean, those could be, 5+ sack games each, something like that. It depends, again, how, Colorado State runs, that Jay Norvell air raid offense. If they actually run it like that, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for where there's going to be a tackle out there all by himself, and all you got to do is beat him and you get a sack. So I do think over 30 and 1 over 8, I agree on both of those.
Okay. I'll say I agree on over 30. I think they'll definitely get to break last year's record. I'm going to say this. I think that they will have a lot of players getting into the 5-6 sack range, maybe even getting to that 7 number. But I think George Tarles right now everybody else in the team is sitting at like 2 or 1.5 sacks so far coming out. I believe George Tarles is 1.5 sacks right now. So I think it's going to be a good team focus. I think you're going to see Banyard getting back there. I think you're going to see George Charles getting back there. You see Washington, Noah, you bringing guys off the edge, especially when you start playing these teams that are naturally pass heavy or will become pass heavy as Boise State develops leads on them. I think that sack numbers are going to go up as a team. But I do see Boise State maybe getting to 7, but I'm not seeing +7 this year for Boise State, at least not with how it started so far for the program. One more defensive question, special teams question, and we're done. I said that Boise State would have 2 pick sixes this year. I mean, then that going off of last year, that wasn't that bad of a prediction. Boise State had a ton of interceptions as a whole. And I mean, they started the year with that amazing pick 6 right off the bat there, bringing it all the way back against UCF. And they did have several pick 6s last year in a team that was very focused on interceptions. Boise State this year, not as many interceptions. They only had 5 picks this year. They had 13 in 2022. Sorry, in 2021, they had 13 picks in 2021, only 5 this year. Will Boise State have a pick 6? No, not talking about necessarily getting to those numbers, but will they have a pick 6? And will they have a player who gets 3 or more picks? Because every single player on the team that has an interception only has 1 so far this year. So can Boise State have a player with 3 or more picks this year? Will they get a pick 6 this season?
So this is one where I'm going to be a little more bullish on this one, not because I don't think we have the talent there, but because, I mean, other than Jaron Hall, I don't see any quarterback that remains. Maybe Cooper Legis, although he has to play. Remember, I was talking about Utah State was on their 4th string quarterback last week during the game. So other than that, that's potentially 1.5 quarterbacks you see of the remaining 6 games for that opportunity to get picks there. I just don't see the balls there. I just don't see the opportunities. Also, if the defensive line gets sacks, the secondary can't get picks. So I think that's where we're going to see it. I don't think that there's the passing attack that's gung-ho enough about throwing the ball for them to have those opportunities. I don't see the pick 6 opportunity happening. 2 of them also. I don't necessarily see that, just because, I mean, if I saw it, it would be like an at Nevada or Colorado State at home game, something like that. I think that Wyoming knows that they're a running team for the most part. So there's just not enough opportunities there. And I think that, if a quarterback could choose between turning the ball over or taking a sack, he'd probably choose taking a sack. I don't think they're going to get any of those interception goals. 3 interceptions, no, because, I don't think that there's any dominant one receiver, because BYU, remember, they have been in and out with having the receivers there and not a lot. So I don't think they have a dominant target they like to target out there. They've actually shown the ability to play without both those guys. So I just don't see the opportunities there. And again, you have to have one or the other. If you get sacks, you can't get picks. If you get picks, you can't get sacks. So I would say I'm bullish on both of those interception goals.
I agree. I don't think that they'll. I think it could happen in a random situation. I'm not going to go out. I'm going to walk back both those predictions from the preseason. I don't think Boise State will get 2 pick 6s. I doubt that they'll have 8 pick 6 this year. They'll have more interceptions, but I see it more as kind of like, jump ball. You're jumping, you catch as you're going out of bounds, or as you're going to the
Hail Mary or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, catch it and you run it back for 20 yards, something like that, but then you tackle. So Boise State will have some more picks. I don't think they'll get a pick 6. I don't think they'll have a player with 3 or more, just because of, like I said, it's a focus on getting the quarterback down and very much spread the wealth in the secondary there as a whole. So just because so far we've only got 1 apiece, I think Boise State's probably going to stick with not necessarily getting a player to that 3+ number. Now, the last question here, special teams, and then we'll wrap up this video. Boise State has got a great kicker, and that is no surprise. That is no secret there. Jonah Dalmes is a great kicker for Boise State. He had a great season last year, 26 out of 28. He was 2 short of being perfect this season. So far this year, he hasn't struggled because he's such a good kicker. I wouldn't say what he's done is struggled, but he didn't necessarily start off the way that he wanted to. Had some misses where he could have made the kicks for sure, but he's had a great few. He had 4 kicks last week against Fresno State. He's definitely come back strong. He's sitting currently at 10-12 over 10 made for 12 attempts. I predicted that he would come up 3 short of perfect on the season. Now, the question here is, will Jonah Dalmes finish the year perfect? Do you think that he will not miss any more, come up 2 short of being perfect? Or do you think my prediction will stand where he'll be 3 or more short of being perfect this year? So that's the first question. Second one is, will his leg be needed to win a game? So far in his career at Boise State, he has not had a game-winning kick. He's had a great performance. He's kicked a lot of field goals, but the score has never come down to a field goal. It's always come down to more than that. He had a chance against Oklahoma State, and that one was obviously blocked. So he's not been put in a position where he has to win a game with his legs. Do you think that time will come this year where he will try out in the field to kick a game-winning field goal, or he'll be in a situation like Sachs was against Florida State, where he has to make like 5 or 6 field goals and we win by like a touchdown or something because of all the field goals he made? So do you think that'll be a game where he wins on his leg? Do you think that he will miss again the rest of the season? Those are the 2 questions.
So I do think he will miss the rest of the season. However, I think that his long is going to get longer, because if you look at it, the only beneficiary of the only part that you actually think that things get easier for Boise State when they go on the road these next couple of games is at Air Force and at Wyoming are super, super high altitude, incredibly high altitude. The ball will absolutely go a country mile. So at Air Force, at Wyoming, 2 games he has down the rest of the season, as opposed to, Boise, which is about 2,000 feet above sea level. UTEP is in the mountains, New Mexico is in the mountains, but they're not that high. But, Oregon State's close to sea level as well there. So they're going to have more opportunities there. I think that he's going to have a kick longer than 48. That's his long right now on the season. I do think he's going to miss just because, like you said, I think that he has more opportunities where they're going to be like, okay, 53, but we're at Wyoming. Let's try it. Let's figure this out. And he might have an opportunity to miss those games. Do I think he's going to have a game winner? If I chose whether or not he's going to have a game winner, I think it would have to be the BYU game. I think BYU is a more explosive offense, a more explosive brand of football than Air Force is. I don't think Air Force is designed to run a 2-minute drill or defend against a 2-minute drill as well as BYU understands they're an up and down team. They've got a lot more athletes like that. So if it was going to be a game, it would be the BYU game if I had to guess. But the rest of those games, I don't see an Air Force game coming down to the wire with a kick or anything like that. But I think he will miss more than 2, if that's your question. He'll miss more than 2. And then I do think he will also I don't think he's going to kick a game winner, but I think he's going to kick longer than 48 for sure. I would say he might even kick something like 52, 53 in a game. Because like I said, at Air Force, at Wyoming, really, really easy to kick there because the ball will just keep on going.
Well, he has the leg for it even at lower altitudes. He's done it before as well, those longer kicks. So, yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that as far as extending his long and finishing out the season with a great run. He's had a great year so far. Misses is great overall for a kicker. 10 out of 12. He's been great so far this year. He's great last season. An all-time great for Boise State. I think he'll finish off the year with a plum. I do think that it will be closer to my prediction there. I think he'll miss a couple of times at least one more time throughout the rest of the year. And I agree with you on that. Not that his leg wouldn't be needed to win a game. I said I'm predicting 2 losses right now. If we win those games, one of those I think will come down to about a field goal difference, where that's the kick that puts Boise State up by 2 possessions and thereby wins the game because it forces BYU or Air Force into a completely different form of offense. You go up against 2 possessions against Air Force, that is a really, really strong spot. So I think if we beat Air Force, I think it will be because of his leg. And it could be a similar spot against BYU. But as I'm predicting losses in both of those, I'm not going to say he's going to kick a game winner right now for Boise State. But either way, we're not necessarily sitting at the spot we were in the preseason where we were saying this could be a team that goes to potentially a New Year's Six. We were kind of saying that was a ceiling for Boise State. We moved away from that. I mean, even Boise State in the best of circumstances with your prediction finishing 10-2 is still going to be a 10-2 team that has a loss to UTEP and a likely still unranked Pac-12 team at the end of the year, besides the BYU, who's not necessarily the top team that were last year, without a true signature win on it. So you're looking at 11-2 with a Mountain West win, but also going against a lot of teams in the group of 5 that are probably going to have better resumes overall. Now, it could happen. I mean, the winner of the Mountain West always has a shot, but you're also having to fight that East Coast bias. There's a lot of other things that we've talked about when we start talking about Ken Boyd and Mountain West team with a 2-game loss record get to the New Year's Six. So I think we've moved well away from that. But as Boise State fans, considering that we haven't been to a bowl in 2 years, considering the way that Boise State kind of went halfway through this season with that loss to UTEP and those disappointing games early on, the fact that we're sitting in a spot here that we're talking about a Mountain West Championship game, the fact that we're talking about Boise State pairing off against a Power 5 team in a bowl, in the Mountain West Champions Bowl game, yeah, I am excited as a Boise State fan, as I always am. I mean, Boise State could start the season 0-6, and I'll say I'm still excited about what could happen the rest of the year. I'm always going to be that optimist internally. The analyst side of me kind of smacks me down and says, look at this a little bit more realistically. But I'm always going to be excited as a Boise State fan. But the analyst side of me is excited here too, because I think that Boise State has a lot of potential to build and to grow. This is year 2, brand new coaching staff, and even more new now than it was before, with your switching out offensive coordinator halfway through. Got a lot of experience, but now back into being an offensive coordinator, which he hasn't done in a while. So, or at the collegiate level. So, this is a coaching staff that is new, that has had a lot of changes happen, that you've got a lot of changes happening at the player level, especially at that quarterback position, but you're still a team, that Boise State way of saying, doesn't matter, next man up, we're going to have a chance to go out and reach greatness this year. That level for what greatness means has changed a little bit than when you're talking about the 2009 teams and that 2010 and that kind of thing. But 8-4, 10-2, Mountain West champions, or latest a chance to go to the Mountain West, will be an amazing finish for Boise State, especially after that 7-5 season last year. It's something to build on coming into year 3. I'm excited, man. I don't know if you have any closing out words here. We're halfway through the year. Boise State has 2 more games to get bowl eligible, and this is going to be an exciting finish for sure.
Well, when I was at the San Diego State game, 13-0, down at half, and you could tell that everyone's same old, come out, touchdown, interception first, and then touchdown, and you could tell that the place was absolutely electric, because you knew that people were like, this is a senior-laden team. This team has seniors all over the place. We should be great here. And all that takes is just a little bit of tweaks in here and there. My roommate and I, we were talking, and we were kind of like, have you ever seen those videos or those movies where like, and hey, man, how about we have one last ride? I'm looking at Dirk Cutter out there where he's like, Dirk Cutter, even a lot of his interviews, he basically is like, hey, man, what were you doing this weekend? He was like, I was golfing in McCall. He's like, I'm not recruiting. I'm not doing any of that stuff. This is my last run. I'm going to do a couple games here, and then I'm out. I'm not doing any of that crap. And you can tell that he's kind of like, the one last ride with Dirk Cutter. That's what this season is. But you could tell that he was able to harness the team and the ability that was on the team. We knew this, what came out in the last 6 quarters that we've seen so far. We knew that was on the field the whole time. We saw glimpses of it against Oregon State. Again, we didn't see glimpses of it in the first quarter, but we saw glimpses of it in certain games there, but just wasn't able to put it together. This team didn't realize what they were. Instead of, like you said, we talked about Tim Plow, instead of applying his offense to the team, Dirk Cutter is applying the team to his offense. What do we do well? We get this 6'6" quarterback in that nobody can catch. We have Helani, who's a stud. We have Ginty as a stud. Down the field, like you said, where Talen's great ability is our offensive line looks really, really good when one of those defensive linemen is chasing Talen and not chasing the running back. Running back gets downfield. We do so well with that kind of play. So I'm really excited the rest of the way of the season. I do think this next week, like you said, if we win at Air Force, oh man, that hype train, dude, you will not be able to shut people in Boise up, man. It's going to be nuts. I'm telling you, the BYU game is going to be bananas. It'll be bananas anyway, because there's so many, Mormons that live in Boise. But man, I'm telling you right now, you saw in the last 6 quarters what this team is capable of. You talk about now, get a little softer here. Now, Air Force is tough. BYU at home, Colorado State at home, at Nevada, at Wyoming, Utah State at home. It really, really softens up here. So things are in line for Boise State to do well. Man, the fact that we're even mentioning the Mountain West championship game. I mean, I remember you sitting on my couch and we were both getting ready to, I don't know. We were really, really sad is what I'll say. But we're going to complete different, change from there. Now, remember, you had mentioned, a couple things to kind of temper our expectations here. What happens if we're down 28-13 in the second half? Do we have the ability to maybe go a little more up tempo and maybe be a little more vertical with our passing game? I don't know about that. I do know that if Taylen Green only has to face 2 or 3 or 4, 3rd and 7 or longers in a game, I think we'll be fine. If he's got to deal with 10, it's going to be trouble for us. That's where we have our biggest issues in the game. So, man, I'm really excited about the rest of the season here. Man, really excited, man. I'll give it to you, man. That's all I got to say.
You can feel it in the fan base. I mean, there's just something that hasn't been there, not just this year or last year, but just for several years. It's just kind of like Boise State as a team, and maybe it just kind of trickled down to the fan base that we were just kind of plodding along. You start off in those great Fiesta Bowl heights. You come in, Brian Harsin comes in, he gets us back to the Fiesta Bowl, but then after that, it just kind of seems like a plateau. And it just kind of seemed like, well, here's another season, and obviously excited, but it just, the energy that was there in the early 2000s up through the 2011 timeframe, it just didn't seem to be there anymore, and especially the last 3 years. And then COVID hit, and it just, just knocked everything out, and everybody just felt a little bit different. It's just felt like Boise State fans and the team have just kind of been coming season to season without any of that excitement, expectation, and hope that drives a fan base, that drives the people into the seats. Was it back-to-back sellouts, right? Against San Diego State and Fresno State. Fresno State was like a career record overall for most tickets sold in a game, I believe it was. So you just have this feeling that there's something happening in Boise, and will that mean Boise State goes undefeated? I don't think that everybody thinks that. I think people are realistic. They understand some teams that Boise State's coming up against. Not that you're being unrealistic by saying 6-0, but they're not saying we have to go undefeated to finish off the year. But they're saying there's something happening here. Dirk Cutter's last ride. You've got the future of Boise State stepping onto the field in Genty and Green and performing at a level that they shouldn't be performing at right now as freshmen, and they are. And there just seems to be a feel that there's something going to be happening in the future here for Boise State that if we can just catch hold of and support this team, we're going to be able to get them there. And that's what it's just felt like the last couple of weeks and moving into now going up against Air Force the rest of the season. So, win or lose for Boise State, we're always going to support them, but it does sure feel good when you're supporting a team that's not just winning, but dominating. I have not felt comfortable in the game in years, where I've just sat there and gone, oh yeah, we're going to crush this team by the second quarter. For years, I have not sat in a Boise State game and been like, second quarter, we're going to win this game, and it just feels good to watch Boise State go out and crush somebody. And we haven't seen that, and especially not against good teams, against rival teams. We haven't seen that in years, and Boise State's doing that. So again, whether that's just the fact that it was two teams that were down, but the offense has changed something, I don't know, but something different is happening in Boise. This was an amazing video talking about everything that's gone on so far this season, what we might expect. Let us know your predictions in the comments. What do you think Boise State's going to do for the rest of the year? 6 more games. We're currently sitting at 4-2. What's their ceiling? Do you think they're going to who do you think they'll play? I mean, we had that discussion. We want to hear your side. Would you like to see them Oregon State again? Would you like to see maybe someone else different, like a Washington or Washington State or somebody else? Let's just have this discussion with us, because we've had an amazing time talking about it. We want to have that discussion with you. Make sure you check out Master Football's channel. Make sure you check him out on Twitter. Make sure you check me out on Twitter as well. And if you've been watching these videos for a while and you've been on the fence about liking and subscribing, just please like and subscribe today. It's enough. It's been enough time. I've shown you what I've got. It's time to commit. I'm ready to commit to this relationship. I hope you are too. Let's like and subscribe and move forward together supporting Boise State. So thanks so much for watching. As always, like, subscribe, and of course, as always, go Big Blue!